Hello friends, my name's Ty and I'm going to read to you. Today's selection comes from my friend TN Baldwin, and the first of his Magicum series called Discoveries. And if you like what you hear, you can find out more about him at tnbaldwin.com or find the Magicum series on Amazon. Here we go. Chapter 1. The Rock. Any lingering notions of Logan's importance in the world leaked from him the moment he entered. Located in the deepest reaches of the rock, this tiny cavern summed up the last 10 months. A single candle in a dusty crate, fighting to banish seeping shadows. Cockroaches or worse, rustling in boxes stacked against rust-colored stone walls. Dry dust that was somehow musty, hanging so heavily Logan wondered whether the smell rolling through the complex began in this room. Sit. Muddy eyes shadowed in darker pits. Carla Romero, tutor of practical application, fixed her gaze on the globule of light. Though perched on a small crate, though track marks littered her arms, the tiny woman dominated the space. Logan managed a feeble grin she didn't see, almost whacking his head on the low ceiling. In his haste to sit, his hip nudged a column of boxes. A shoulder shove stopped it toppling. Just. His grin grew feebler as Carla's judgmental eyes flicked on him, then back to the candle. The moment he was seated, she blew it out. Swathed in darkness, in a cluttered cell in the bowels of the rock, his knot of humiliation pulled tighter. Why had his mother sent him here? You know why. Begin! Logan ran through the first drill, one he had mastered as a boy. To be reverting to it at this age. Fluid, focus, flex. Back home where things worked, where it had been easy, his mother, Emily, had been convinced he was a prodigy. From the age of 7, he had been able to rely on changes of state to access Magicum, something many experienced magi couldn't do. He hadn't made a single track mark, a single incision since, until today's humiliation. Emily believed he was destined for greatness, to change humankind's fortunes in the war. And so, after his 17th birthday, she had sent him to the Australian outback, to the Rock, a fraternity where expert magi studied Magicum, supposedly. 10 months later, he was reduced to this. For the first time in a decade, he was forced to try blood. Ever since he had set foot in this giant red rock, his mother's words, his mother's belief, had evaporated. He had to rekindle his skill. 1 month. 1 month and I'm done. He had nowhere to go, only home. He shrank under the thought. Shrugging his shoulders in an attempt to shake uncertainty onto the invisible floor, Logan returned to the drill. Fluid. There was no blood stores to draw on out here. Everyone relied on their own. Hand trembling, Logan took the splinter, a tiny pin made of cryolite, unbreakable solid Magicum. It would activate the Magicum in his blood. Though a simple cut would work, the splinter was much more effective. He hesitated. Where should he stick it? Hand? Forearm? The elbow joint where he knew he had a nice fat vein? Staring into darkness, crossing his eyes, he tried to rid himself of all distractions. His right hand wobbled towards his forearm. The point scratched. Rested, waited, a breath. He pressed. Harder. A sting. Then a dot of warmth. Shame left him wincing. Where does the splinter go? He heard Carla shift, impatient already. He preferred status, at least where Logan was concerned. He dropped it onto the crate, hoping it hadn't rolled off. Right. Magicum. Locate Magicum. He tried blocking out his tutor's breathing. His blood, that was the key. The slight trickle would be enough. For a moment he feared he hadn't broken the skin. This was the first time doing it himself. Breath jarred in his throat. What if he... A thread. Okay, now. Focus. Logan brought his focus to bear, seeking the tiny spread of warmth. His forehead stretched, his jaw tightened, his lips moved. He had forgotten to breathe. A dramatic exhale nearly snipped off his concentration. Focus, focus, focus. Focus, damn it! Okay, calm. Focus. The blood, the magicum within, linked to his thought. Tiny filaments winding into strange, lending him power. Familiar, connecting, comforting. Now flex. Create the picture. Flame on wick. Rub magicum threads and light the candle. You've done it. How many times? Light the candle. Light the stupid candle. A spool of red hair slipped onto his forehead. He pushed it away. Something fluttered near his temple. Itchy spots flared over his scalp. He shifted, resisting the urge to shift. To fidget, to scratch. The itch worsened. Nits? Logan swore the creepy beggars were spreading eggs through his hair. Fluid. Focus. Flex. Picturing the candle lighting, he tried to muster his dandelion fluff thoughts again. An unbearable itch flared, extinguishing the image of a lit candle, spraying imaginary spores from ears and nose and pretty much every orifice. Even as they floated away, he slumped onto his box and scratched hard. That's charming, that is. Carla's manner grated worse than ever after that blessed silence. Scrubbing his hair with overchewed fingernail stubs, Logan suppressed a sigh. Carla's skeletal fingers held a match to the candle. Flame-flecked shadows bruised her hollow cheeks. Demeanor, expression, her map of track marks. He found it hard to believe she's only a few years older. Tell me where you went wrong. Heart slouching into a corner of his chest, Logan guessed. Coming to this stupid place where I'm treated like a kid wasn't the answer she was after. Instead, he stared at the flame, scratched tiny shadows on red stone. The imagined nits doing their funky little thing. Anything other than his tutor peering down her nose, waiting for him, waiting for an answer. He waited for her to get tired of waiting. A traitorous fingernail slipped into his mouth. He directed it back to scratching, and reviewed. I went back to the drill. I followed it to the letter. Fluid, focus, flex. The first drill. Easy. I nearly burnt the house down the first time. Paul was not happy that day. Think. Maybe overdoing practice? Those murky pools masquerading as eyeballs answered that question. I gave up. Insightful. Resisting the urge to flick hawk wax at her, Logan recited, I failed to direct my focus for the necessary time with the requisite concentration and passion. Carla stared at him. Light flickered. She did not blink. Boring. Like talking to a barking textbook. Logan hesitated, idly scratching. Well, that's where it came from. I got itchy and thought about nits? His fingernails dug a little deeper. Something about that word. Now it's like talking to a 6-year-old. And watching one. A spot of blood in her wrist reminded Logan of his tiny wound. She shook her sleeve as it reached for the cloth, smacking knees into a crate. Carla steadied the candle before it could catch the many combustible items in the cell. Hiding embarrassment, Logan smirked, refusing to admit he was intimidated. Frustration pooled in his throat. Fluid. My last hope. Thousands of kilometers through the open. Risking his life? For what? To reach this blasted rock? Great move, Logan. There's a lesson about life choice there somewhere. He swallowed. His mind whirred. Carla cocked a heavy eyebrow. He wondered if she could hear his thoughts as he replaced the splinter in its case and shoved it into his pocket. With no clear idea what she wanted, he grasped for a genuine answer. I don't know. I haven't used blood for a long time. So, not your fault. Typical. Without another word, she blew out the candle. Her fading footsteps barely scuffed. A bewildered silence followed. Well, that was rude. Logan gave in, teeth tearing at a fingernail. Certain she was gone, he pushed back into his too-low seat and fumbled among the boxes, trying to navigate the clutter. His hand brushed the hot wick, triggering a pinprick of pain. Sucking the webbing between his thumb and forefinger, he groped around the table and ran into the sandstone wall. Easing his way around the edge, Logan sensed open space before stumbling into another stack of boxes. As he barked his shins on a crate of sharp-edged files, he gained invaluable insight into how helpful light was. A shame he hadn't generated it, really. Carla missed all of this, not that Logan's antics would have raised a smile. She roved through dark caves illuminated by her stubby candle, treading a winding thoroughfare that would eventually lead to the surface, the open. Of course, she had no intention of going out there. This deep in the rock, every cavern was natural. Rough stone floors threatened to turn the ankle of the careless. Occasional slow-burning torches flickered patterns over red stone before becoming swallowed by shadows. Few footprints marked the gritty rock, a reminder of how unusual it was to train students so far underside. She consoled herself that Logan wasn't bright enough to notice. And what Davis doesn't know won't leave me answering awkward questions. Tossing aside thoughts of the magic exec, who had pushed for his tutoring session, Carla slipped through the chink of rock, entering a hidden cavern. Blowing out her candle, as was expected, she felt her way through the pitch black. Her fingers tinged a pipe at the deepest corner, a gentle counterpoint to her stale brew of guilt and disgust. Before she had been born, the rock had been reclaimed, or lost, depends on who you were listening to, from Carla's mob, Australia's First Nations people. After convincing them to give it up again, a stunningly stupid marketing plan had been conceived back when humanity lived in the open. Ignoring cultural taboos and environmental concerns, one of the greatest natural wonders of the world had been refurbished. This pipe was just one example. Hollow tubes of metal had been inserted, twisting through passages like intestines. The idea being, of course, to speak in one end so someone on the other could return the pointless favor. Oh, the pipes worked if you could be bothered spending hours finding the appropriate end while your friend waited. Like so many of the renovations infecting the rock's natural beauty, they didn't hold anyone's attention for more than a moment. Well, other than Carla's. This intestine was hers, ready to spew filth from an end she still hadn't found. But if I do... Carla's fingers trailed over the emblem beneath, flinching at the strange, familiar residue it left. As far as she discovered in her endless search, only this pipe bore that sticky mark you had to press to speak. She suspected Magicum was involved somehow. Rubbing her fingers, she tried to rid herself of the deposit, then pushed, stomach clenching, recalling the first time the hated voices drifted out. Carla leant forward. He failed. A drawn-out silence followed. Then a hollow voice, neither old nor young, male nor female, puffed from her end. That was your task. Sickened by the arrogant assumption, she knew better than to ask the next question. Why do you want him to fail? I said it. That's enough. A pause, a moment to drive home who was in charge. Your desires mirror mine. You want him to fail. Carla's fingers curled into impotent claws. Or perhaps it's for your benefit. Who can say? Carla's jaw tensed. Though far from Logan's biggest fan, no tutor enjoyed seeing her student fail, let alone contributing to it. Worse, she wasn't sure Logan hadn't noticed that spot of blood. Or, worst of all, the intimacy of touching Logan's power, even to block his focus, lingered, churning her stomach. And then there was the growing exhaustion from drawing on what little bit of power so deep underside. Still, she knew better than to bite. Yeah, well, done. Anything else? No answer. She knew what would happen next. Sure enough, the moment she turned away, the voice resumed. Questions are dangerous. You asked one too many today. A deliberate pause. One prick of control in her life. Then the inevitable. Understood. Indeed. This time, Carla heard the silence. You always have the last word. She hurried along the edge of her room, daring the disembodied voice to speak again. Hearing no further sound, she pushed into the corridor. Weariness crept into her bones. Something deeper, something darker, added weight. She had long since shaken off the sense of footsteps following her, those unpredictable echoes bouncing through the pipes. But she could never escape the sense of being followed by sleepless eyes. Tracking upwards, Carla wove through the cavern and turned, around natural and man-made pillars, treading over hundreds of footprints. Torches and lanterns glimmered against stretches of orange wall. Others remained dark. Her candle struggled to banish the shadows within and without. Echoes, not hers, signaled others going about their business. She reached the training cells. Lessons were being taught, some of the last before Christmas break. Aloysius was droning on to 7 bright sparks, their youngest students, about discovery of Magicum. Past the largest teaching cavern, Eloise's, where she was snapping at a fire starter, those approaching their teens. "How dare you use someone else's blood? I don't care if he said it was okay." Hurrying past the etiquette lessons, Carla ignored the workshops where her solitary semi-friend, Felicity, would be working with her artificers. Using tools and focus to restore Magicum devices underground was an exhausting business, despite the fact they ran on capsules of cryogenous, clear liquid Magicum, rather than fluid from the body. The demands of practical Magicum use in the rock meant artificers worked 4 days a week rather than 6. As tutors for practical application, Carla was the only other inhabitant with that privilege. At the junction to a stone maze blocked by an old gate, another refurbishment, Carla hesitated. Food or sleep? Eating would hasten her recovery, as long as she had the energy to finish. Had she thought to organize herself, she would have left something on her dilapidated side table this morning. Her weariness was too great. Descending the uneven stairs, she scrambled over the gate and wove through the maze, heading for her cell, a welcome segregation in the single women's section. Echoes followed, echoes she forced herself to ignore. Now traveling a smooth, straight passage, she passed walls adorned with newer torches, revealing artistic natural formations. Beautifully patterned stony waves, colored hollows like giant fingerprints, and bright blooms carved over centuries. Carla was never quite sure how others heard about the rock. Her own journey had ended here after chasing a cold trail of dark hints. Aside from the mutilations on her arms, using Magicum underground took more energy than using your hands. Most magi didn't risk the dangerous journey. People with no Magicum talent, norms, like their cook and General Fix-It, Mr. Fix-It, Garcia. How did they end up here? Why would a norm come all that way? And what about Logan? He had appeared through the red dust storms before getting the first meeting off on a wrong foot. Yet, despite his obsession with small talk, he had shared little. Not that she had pried, but... Carla quelled her moment of curiosity. People's secrets were their own. It was cooler here. The hairs on her bare legs stood to attention. Exhaustion, a heavy weight. She corrected a stumble. Her curses danced among the echoes. After slipping through the door and pressing it closed, Carla plunged into her yellow-stained waffle blanket. The buzz of conversation drowning the echoes as she entered the dining hall was the first indicator. With fewer than 200 inhabitants, finding enough people to create a buzz was rare. Almost everyone was in here. As Carla observed Logan's clumsy attempts to chat with 2 young adult girls from the flamethrowers, she admitted there was worse things than helping him fail. She stomped on another guilty chute. A large open cavern, the dining hall was the one cavern that was always well lit. Smoke hung in filmy curtains, struggling to escape through the natural stone chimney. Covered wooden torches, regularly replaced by Garcia, left soot stains on one of the intestines wandering the far wall. 2 long, unvarnished tables stood in the corner, dwarfed by the chamber's immensity. Wooden benches lined each, rubbed bare by dozens of bottoms every day. Garcia was serving Logan, laughing at something the red-haired teen had said. Carla waited until he had moved on before approaching, though somehow the kid's gray eyes managed to find hers. She stared him down, smirking as his gaze shot sideways and his meal slopped onto the floor. Tonight's meager buffet was an exercise in depression. A casserole, wrinkled vegetables, lonely chunks of camel meat, drowning in congealed gravy. Tired slices of damper, dozing alongside the pot. Unimpressed, Carla settled in on one item with a hint of promise. Garcia's apple and sultana pie. As she raised her plate, Garcia dipped a giant lid into the casserole. "Yeah, none for me," said Carla. "Bet you'd like a smidge of me apple pie, though, eh, Carla, eh?" Pinned beneath his broad brim, she risked a smile. Flour streaked his cheek, and stubble darkened his face, though he had probably shaved that morning. "Maybe a small piece. Not that small." She quirked an eyebrow as he doubled her portion. "It's all right. I had no choice but to make apple pie, what with this sorry mess." He waved at the casserole. "Had to give something to your working folk, eh?" He laughed. Carla's mouth twitched. Everyone loves your apple pie. True enough, true enough. I love it myself, he said, patting his ample stomach. I don't know how you do it. When did the last train come through? 6 months, I reckon. It's all right. I plan ahead. Years ahead. And food's me one true love. He laughed again. Oh, saw young Logan just now. He was wailing up a storm something about you taking him back to preschool. Wailing's what he does best. The kid thinks he's better than he is, and nothing's ever his fault. Her voice sounded harsh, with the lies squirming over her tongue. Garcia leant forward. Might want to remember, others don't feel likewise-ish. Never seen Davis so excited about a newbie. Feels like the kid's been here forever. Last person to come here, as you well know. He tapped his broad red nose. Community like ours, gotta get along, eh? Before Carla could respond, he handed her the plate and winked, turning to his next customers. Carla's raised eyebrow was at risk of vanishing into her severe hairline upon seeing Davis and Serena approaching. Magus exec of the Rock. Davis's rakish grin was absent. Serena, unofficial second in charge, had adopted her usual scowl, marring otherwise attractive features. Carla headed for a lone seat, avoiding eye contact, which did nothing whatsoever to deter Serena. She left the line and followed her short blonde hair. She left the line and followed, her short blonde hair bobbing as she, like a duckling dragged by a current. Where have you been? Carla tugged down her sleeves. Studying. Serena looked skeptical. The insides of my eyelid. Days off. So, you haven't heard? What? Why do you think we're out with this rabble? Davis had something to share. Serena licked her lips, accentuating her feline chin. Someone stole. If I could have everyone's attention, boomed Davis, standing on a short wooden bench. Serena's mouth snapped shut and she pinged onto the closest bench, staring at Davis in a way Carla could only describe as avid. As voices died down, Carla settled a comfortable distance further along the bench. Serena slid alongside her. Had this assembly been less unusual, Carla might have slid further along just to see what the other woman would do. Davis's sandy hair was neat, combed straight back. Aside from a patched tweed jacket, he wore plain clothing. Little more than average height and appearance, he traveled over the ground as if he was taller and better looking. Thanks, everyone, for turning out. I've never felt so popular. A slight air of expectation drifted through the cavern. Clearly, everyone in Carla had known of this announcement. A particularly concerning event has opened an amazing opportunity for us here at the Rock. The teleporter in Shanghai has been attacked. The city gutted. Abominations are believed responsible. Davis paused. Carla picked at her pie crust, certain he was trying to excite more curiosity. Like Garcia, she found him tolerable for a man, but also knew the politician. That's where the section ends. And once again, if you liked that, you can check out TN Baldwin's work at tnbaldwin.com or on Amazon. And once again, as always, thanks very much for being here with me.